Yeah, I mean, there's a fundamental I'm gonna sneeze, or am I? I'm on the cusp of sneezing.
Right.
Will it happen? Won't it?
I don't know if we're actually talking about sneezing right now. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not sure.
Yeah, for a second I was like, is he gonna sneeze? It's cool. It's cool to sneeze. But you're
I didn't know if that was philosophical or not. Because that's smart. Or is he sneezing?
To be very clear, I was about to sneeze.
It's phenomenology, man. You gotta read the books. If you'd read the books, you'd understand.
That's on me.
Hi, you're listening to the Reinvention podcast. I'm Aaron Anderson. I'm here with my lovely co-host, Ace Callwood.
Hey, Aaron, how are you?
Oh, that was good. That was a good radio voice. I like that. Do that again.
Hey, Aaron, how are you?
And we are here with a wonderful guest who agreed to be here, Dr. Chioke I'Anson. How you doing, man?
Welcome to BT Jazz Visions.
Oh, that's nice. Oh, he's good at this, though. He's a legit pro. So thanks for being here, man.
Oh, yeah, it's a pleasure.
So the reason I wanted to talk to you is you have one of the more interesting career trajectories of anyone in the world.
I mean, insofar as I have a bunch of fragmented careers that I've cobbled together through grit and gumption. Yeah.
So let's talk about that. So
I like the way Aaron said it best.
Yeah, I sounded better.
Yeah, no, you have to say it differently now.
You are a professor of African American Studies.
Yes.
You are a voice talent for National Public Radio.
Correct.
I've heard you on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me and a bunch of commercials.
I did that a couple times.
All right. You did well, though.
I did all right. Yeah, it was. They invited me back.
And you still do voice work for NPR.
I do. Yeah.
And you teach a class on podcasting.
Yes.
And some of your students have excelled in a national contest on podcast.
One of my students actually this semester got an internship to All Things Considered.
No kidding.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you say their name?
Brandon Shillingford.
That's cool. How do you win that?
Well, you have to apply, but there's like mad applicants.
Right.
Right.
Grit and gumption. Is that what got him there?
Yeah, a little bit of that. And we also did, I mean, he's amazing. It's always difficult, like taking credit for your students' accomplishments, because some students are just like markedly better than you ever were at their age. Right.
All of my students are better than I was at that age.
Right. So it's weird. But I will say, though, that I had a little workshop where I called and emailed all of my NPR friends and said, what's a good internship application? And then I shared all that with students, Brandon among them. And so then Brandon got a internship.
That's awesome.
That's incredible.
No, it's major, because an internship in NPR is like the surest way to full-time employment in like the public media podcasting world. Right. Like,
So like a clerkship for a federal judge.
Yeah.
Equivalent.
It's like, imagine being an intern and then being a host of All Things Considered, because that's what happened to Ari Shapiro.
Is it really?
Yeah.
It is.
That's awesome. So let's actually talk about how you got in NPR. Now you were you're a professor of African American Studies. That came first.
Yes.
Wait, can I pause and say that I'm not sure if you're taking a test or not about your career? It's almost like Aaron went through your LinkedIn and he's seeing if you cop to the things that you put there.
I agree that those are things that happened, and I am also deeply troubled at the amount of information that you have about me.
You can plead the fifth at any time during this podcast.
Yeah. So the reason I know so much about you, I've been a fan of yours since I read an article in the Washington Post about you in 2017.
Oh my God.
You know this article, right? You must know this article.
Yeah. Because that was the journalist. I forget his name. He's like an amazing journalist who's like a super career dude. Is a very good writer, but was the only person that allowed me to talk about Hegel.
No kidding. Yeah. Well, that's not a thing that I'm going to let you talk about here.
Most people don't want to hear me talk about Hegel.
So this article in the Post was talking about there's a guy who's a motorcycle. Well, the other thing I forgot to mention is you were first and foremost a motorcycle guy.
See, that he really understood me.
Yeah. So and this article pointed out that you're a motorcycle guy, right? You're a motorcyclist, right? Who also happens to be a professor and who happens to be a voice talent at NPR. And the article talked about, if you want to know Hegel and you want to know, and there was another philosopher that was discussed in there too. But there was all this stuff about motorcycles and about voice and about philosophy and about your students.
Yeah, it's all jumbled together.
But that's how life works, you know. I like that it's jumbled.
Yeah.
Life is an assemblage.
when you were a kid, did you have any clue what trajectory your life was going to take? Or have you just been along for the ride?
No, nothing makes any sense whatsoever.
Right.
And also, I should say, I mean, we're talking about my very recent accomplishments, and we haven't really noticed like the 20 years where I was just like on people's couches, not finishing my dissertation.
Right.
Right.
What was your
let's
dissertation?
spend some time there. Well, it's in philosophy, and I think I was studying at the time.
That's why I haven't read it.
I know. No,
Chioke, have you read your dissertation?
not since I wrote it.
Well, there we go. I don't feel bad anymore.
Yeah. No, it was like, I don't know. Well, it was about Hegel, but in the context of humanitarian organizations in sub-Saharan Africa.
Well, that's cool.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fine.
Is that how you ended up as a professor of African American studies?
Yes, kind of. Before I got to VCU, I taught at Spelman College.
Okay.
And while I was there, I taught African diaspora classes, and I took to it pretty quickly, and then started teaching.
I saw a clip. I think it was a YouTube clip of you talking about the African diaspora. You're doing a lecture or something.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love it. I think that everybody should be studying Africana thinking and history. Like everybody, like every single person. And also we should make it easy to do that.
Well, it was also a really well-produced video clip, which was essentially a promo for a college class, which is not a thing that often people do.
Well, that was back in the day of All Lab at VCU. Remember them?
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
Were you always interested in media?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
I would say so.
When did that start?
So when I got to college, I was like, okay, I'm going to major in journalism and that whole jam. But then basically the first day of school, I went to the radio station and I was like, I want to be on the radio, please.
So while you were an undergrad, you were in the radio?
Yeah.
Now, did you know that you had a good voice for it? Or did you just dig the thing and just happen to have a good voice?
I think that a lot of people told me I had a good voice.
Right. They told me I had a face for radio. I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah. But
that's
yeah,
different, Aaron.
It's not the same thing. No, but yeah. So I think that people told me that, and I always liked radio. I'm sure you all can remember the age of waiting for your song to come on and pressing record on the tape player, and then like later like the CD burner, like the rack CD burner.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I was always into radio in that regard, and then especially in college, I started listening to this weird radio show called This American Life,
Right.
And like sitting in the car in the driveway, like listening to stories and whatnot. And so I was always interested in that at the same time that I was interested in, doing academic stuff. Right. Yeah.
So, but the academia was the thing that paid the bills eventually.
I mean, once again, I've been broke and underemployed for a very long time. So it'd be very generous to say that anything was paying any kinds of bills other than like people's kindness. You know what I'm saying? But yeah.
But did you set out to be a professor? Like you set out to get into academia?
No, it was my great dream to be a professor for sure. Yeah.
And then how did that transition into voice, like NPR? You were the article in the Post was essentially like you were discovered. Somebody heard your voice and like ran in the room and gave you the job.
Strong words. Yeah. So to be very clear, I thought I was done with radio and podcasting. I thought I was finished with it.
Right.
When I got the job at VCU, I was like, oh shit, I've done it. I'm a professor.
Right.
The party's over. Call my mom. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, we did it. We made it. But then friends of mine who I had worked with in media would hit me up and say, hey, can you help me do this project or whatever? And I was like, yeah, sure, that's fine. And then just one day, one of those projects ended up taking me to NPR.
And then while you were actually in the building with people with NPR?
I was in the building. So what happened is that my podcast partner, Kelly Jones, shout out to Kelly. So Kelly Jones was like, hey, I have this idea for a podcast. And I was like, well, look, I have a lot of free time. So let's work on it. And we made a little teaser and a little, write up, and we sent it to places. And very quickly we got into like the top 10 of the Radiotopia PodQuest, which was like unexpected. And then we, like that same week or something, like we also got into the NPR Story Lab, which is the first of its kind, like story training week
Right.
at NPR. So that was super dope. And then at the thing at NPR, while we were presenting the podcast, like here's what the show is, that whole thing. There was a guy in the audience, because it was just open to anybody at NPR to stop by. So there was a guy in the audience who who worked in programming on like Team Atlas, et cetera, a guy named Izzy Smith, an amazing man. And he was like, "Hey kid, here's my card. I want you to do an audition." And I was like, "Okay." I didn't even know exactly what was happening.
So you didn't know what you were auditioning for?
I wasn't entirely clear on what it was, but of course, I realized, oh wait, this is for the underwriting thing. But of course, the underwriting voice at NPR for years and years and years was one person. It was
Carl Castle, right? Was that the guy?
No. That was Carl Castle's the great newscaster that retired to Wait, Don't Tell Me, and then but no, Frank Tavares.
Okay.
And so he was the underwriting guy that would tell you with the underwriting. But of course, that voice is what let you know that you were definitely listening to NPR. So
and underwriting is the commercials.
The commercials, yeah,
Right.
Exactly, yeah. So in other words, it was a voice that I had been listening to for like years and years and years. And I was like, oh man, wouldn't it be cool? And in fact, like other radio people that I knew had told me, hey, you should do the underwriting at NPR. And I was like, wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. So then I did an audition, and like quite amazingly, they hired me.
What year was that you got the job?
Like 2016, maybe.
So you're still doing this.
I'm still doing it. Yeah.
So do you get up in the morning and do that, and then
Exactly.
head into work?
Yeah. I get up in the morning, I track, and I turn the stuff in, then I go about the rest of the academic life.
Do you do it at your house?
I do, yeah.
You do it like do you have a whisper booth, or do you do it in like a closet?
I got a whisper room, 4x4.
Do you
know
really?
what I'm saying? Yeah. I got
That's cool.
I got some sweet stuff in there. I got the same mic, you know what I'm saying? But I have a Universal Audio Aero.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you just put it straight into the computer and just go?
Yep.
What do you use to edit it?
Reaper.
No, old school stuff.
Reaper. That Reaper presence is what's up. NPR has its own proprietary system, which is either called David or David. No one really knows.
Okay.
But I just use Reaper. Reaper is like, I'm trying to get the whole city on Reaper. So when we
Reaper's awesome.
when we open the media center, Reaper is going to be the main software.
One of my binge watch like YouTube things. A guy named I don't know what his actual name is, but his podcast channel is Booth Junkie.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah. Mike Delgadio.
But Reaper, man, he's all about Reaper.
Reaper is great. It's great. Yeah. It's just the functionality to cost. There's nothing better that's an audio editor, I don't think.
So you were working, so you're a professor, you get up in the morning, you do the things, and then when did you start teaching a class in podcasting?
It's probably like a year or two into doing the NPR thing. Because, well, in IFAM, I teach the core classes, but I also get a special class. So I've taught different classes as the special class. And so then when I got to do podcasting, I was elated, and it started working out very well. People liked the class, that whole jam.
Did you have equipment for your kids? Students, sorry, not kids.
We have like a couple little recorder things. And then we got, how on campus there's like a HETF type thing.
Right.
So now we have like some more recording gear. Because I had some small grant stuff that got equipment. But then we actually have a whisper room in African American Studies.
Oh, that's
No
cool.
way.
Yeah. No, it's pretty sweet. Yeah.
And the class was the latest version that I've heard of is Podcasting While Black. Is that the actual?
That's the name of it. Yeah.
And is that what's the mission of that, as opposed to just, because you're not just talking about audio technique in a class like that. You're talking about mission and values and all that stuff.
And how do I get in? I'm one class away from an AFAM minor.
Is that for real?
Yeah. Yeah, that's I knew Dr. Jokido. I took 3 of her classes.
For real? You're just one class away?
I'm one class short of an AFAM minor and a Spanish minor.
I need to hook you up with a guy named Dr. Chioke I'Anson. You should talk to that guy.
I should. But podcasting while black seems appropriate because I've probably been doing it wrong. I don't know.
Yo, so I think we could probably get you into shape if you know.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. Love it.
No, but the class is just about the rhetorical methods. So the thing, so it is the technical stuff, and that takes up a lot of time because even in a semester, all the stuff that you need to make a podcast of like sufficient quality is a lot. But we also study the rhetorical methods of Africana thinkers. So if you think about like, look at a Martin Luther King speech. Okay, so like everybody knows the speech is powerful, but like why? What are the rhetorical methods that are being used that
awesome.
you can then employ in your podcast, for instance?
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we read Martin Luther King, Frederick Douglass, Audre Lorde, and I always put Tracy Cottom on the list, and we never quite get there because inevitably the project gets
Takes
too
longer.
big, and that whole thing. But those are the ideas. So they said these four thinkers we want to examine them and look at the way that they express things and the tools that they use to express things.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because my fundamental belief, maybe you'll agree, is that like if you can divine a structure, you can replicate it. So so that's all we got to work on what that structure is so that it can be yours to use.
And so you can break the rules eventually as well.
You got to know the rules
course,
to break the rules,
Innovation.
Yeah, I know the rules.
Like
Well, yeah. I mean,
sure.
hey, I would say though, as a Hegelian,
Wait, I don't think I've ever heard anyone as a Hegelian.
As a Hegelian, you're only apparently breaking the rules. Like you are in fact folding right back into the structure.
That's
but
true.
yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
When you're talking about the structure, you're not just talking about Aristotelian structure of argument, logos, all that sort of stuff. You're also talking about like Martin Luther King stuff it's very rhetorical. Like it's based in a really classical rhetorical structure. But it's also so you're not just talking about that structure. You're also talking about the rhythm of delivery and the flavor of the stories, because it isn't pure.
Yeah, it's like tone, style, rhetoric, structure, right? All of these things, and
That's badass.
and if you can, it takes a while, right? So this is why I would love for the class to be like 2 semesters, because there's so much to be learned. Because once you say, "Hey, do you see how that's the structure of a thing?"
Right.
Then the student goes, "What?" Oh,
Right.
and then you can say, well, we can keep going because there's still more there, and then you have to learn to replicate it. So inevitably, it never comes together in the way that I want,
Right.
because the studying itself is always kind of wide open.
Right.
Right.
So this is fascinating. What would call it a lockstep 2-semester course? What would that look like if you were going to do it the way you wanted to and you had all the time in the world?
Well, I would start off with like rigorous examination of rhetoric and writing in the first semester, and then the second semester would be all the technical stuff.
Gotcha.
You see what I'm saying?
So they do it that way.
I would totally split it up because there's a lot of,
Theory, then
look at
execution.
where we are. So
Yeah.
like imagine a student knowing nothing and then learning to put this together, right?
Yeah, it would take a little while.
It would take a minute, right? And then there's also the research that you might have to do in order to, like get some stories or to ask the right questions. You have to learn how to interview a person, right? Like that's a set of skills all by itself. You have to learn to develop your podcast idea into a pitch. People think they have podcast ideas and they barely even have ideas, much less pitches, right?
Much less a marketable pitch.
Yeah. And so all of these are skills that it takes a lot of time to develop. And so I want to perfect the way of helping someone go from zero to proper podcast pitch and being able to execute it.
So before the cameras were rolling, before we were all in here, we were talking a little bit about this sort of shared idea, which you articulated really well, which is about the ultimate goal is to teach the students how to market, how to take these ideas and put it in a commercial marketplace in a way that benefits them, right? What's the goal of podcasting while black? Is it to become to create a marketable product, or to get the message out in the world, or a little bit of both?
I mean, the goal of the class is to give the students the skills, right? And to also give them the capability to keep expanding upon those skills. That's the fundamental goal. And I've had some students who have gone on, like one of my students went on to be an Air New Voices fellow. Another student of mine, once again, hard to take credit for students because they can be incredible, but is now working at NPR. And so I want many students to come through in that way. And also, I also think that teaching podcasting or teaching any kind of media creation is also a way to get people to be more critical of media. And so I know that we also need a lot more media literacy skills, and I think media creation is one route to media literacy. Yeah.
No, I dig that.
I like that a lot.
So here's another question. So of the people who are listening to this podcast, both of them, this what we're doing here is speaking into a microphone. We're talking about there's a market for this, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you don't have to have a whisper booth. You can get in your closet if you know what it is you're saying, and you can market your voice. There's a whole world of voice acting.
Yeah.
Right. But if somebody's listening to this and they go, I don't have Chioke's voice, I'm guessing your students also don't have your voice. How do you convince somebody? Because you don't actually have to have the voice of an underwriter to be able to be a successful voice actor.
You definitely do not, right? Like I think that maybe that's the definite misnomer, right? Like they made these nice like bassy microphones for our like nice bassy voices or whatever, but they're we
do have a lot of bass.
We have very nice,
but they're
voices.
perfectly good for all of the other kinds of voices, right?
Right.
And we will also know that it's not simply about like having a voice that emits in a particular tonal range, but it's also about like your delivery, your ideas, your performance,
hitting the final consonants when you're speaking.
I get so many notes about that.
Yeah.
I
used to too when I did voice stuff though, because I used to do it back when there's a big booth, right?
Of
there's
course,
a guy behind the glass.
And
they'd be like, do that again. I didn't hear the final S. I'm like, what final S are you talking about, right?
The one you dropped.
The one you dropped,
Aaron.
right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, it's because the American accent doesn't do that, right? We don't lift the ends of the lines. That takes some training.
No, it does. And I would say that just working at NPR, the way that I spoke on a regular basis before NPR and the way that I speak now are drastically different.
Right. When you're on the mic.
When you're on the mic, but also when you're getting notes from a client that's like, I don't like the way he said, this word or this word, or can we put some more space between that? And it's like, wait a minute, there's a kind of universal delivery, if you will, that you have to hit in order to be legible to just anyone.
Right.
But there's a lot of space for play within that.
Right. Well, most of the people I know most of my students who've gone on to get voice careers are female.
Sure.
Right. That it just, for whatever reason, that seems to work. Or when I was doing it, this voice, this tone is not the voice that sold. It was this one. You're walking down a hallway. It was whatever it was.
The other two underwriting voices at NPR are women who sound a bit like that. We're a very different voice crew.
Yeah. But so if there's somebody who's listening to this and they're thinking, I want to try, because there's not a high bar to entry to get into voice work.
Arguably, it's the lowest of all bars.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to know how to talk into a mic. You need to know how to edit it.
Yeah.
You need to know how to market it, which is a whole different thing.
Yeah, maybe it's easier now than it used to be. There's like 2 or 3 websites, honestly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, where all the voice work is now posted.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think that it's like a sideways thing.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Because
say more.
Because it's like so centralized, and because they charge you healthily to be on there.
Right.
Then
some of them take like 20%.
Well, yeah. So your access is limited by how much you can pay in at the very beginning, and then of course there are the people who are on there who are like kind of killing it, and then they're getting priority in that whole jam. But I do think it's possible for you to break in, right? I think it's still possible because you can at least get access to auditions that you never would have like encountered before.
I have a friend, Chip Bolsick, was a professional voice actor for years. I think he may still do it, but he used to travel just his computer. When he'd travel, they'd give him a call, he'd get an email or whatever, read this script, he'd do it and then send it off, and they'd send it back. And if he got 3 takes that they didn't like, he was like, you need to hire somebody else.
Oh, nice.
No, I'm serious.
Yeah.
Right. And then
is that earned, or is that something that we ought to teach? Right? Was he able to do that because he was good?
Well, after I talked to him, yeah, he was able to do that because.
Or is that something that you roll into a class that says, "Look, if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. Cut bait early, and then go find the gig that's going to work." Right? Like, do we teach that, or did he earn that? Is my question.
I think he earned it.
Okay,
I think he earned it because he had an agent, and his agent was the same one who did Don LaFontaine. So he said, "You're right." When Don LaFontaine died, like the next day, he said everyone was walking down the hall going, "In a world," because everyone wants that gig.
Of course. course,
like
yeah.
maybe it's earned, but I've done it too. I mean, I learned it from him. I got hired to do the voice of Abraham Lincoln for a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I did it, and they were like, "Well, can you do it this way?" And I did it that way. Can you do it this way? I was like, I'm not the voice you want.
Yeah.
Right, 100%.
Yeah.
What the notes you're giving me tell me that you want something you don't know.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
But there's this thread as we talk about being in academia and my teaching philosophy has always been I'm not lecturing, I'm not preaching to anybody. I'm just 15 minutes ahead, pointing out the pothole that jacked me up, right? Like that is my philosophy. And so if I'm pushing and particularly as we're teaching in higher ed now, I think the three of us all live in that realm in very different, wildly differently successful versions of that. But we've got younger and younger students. The TikTok generation is coming in, right?
Yeah.
Like they're always performing, they're always on. There is a world in which they're familiar with technology. We're not.
Right.
There are some things that we get to impart, and it's not always going to be the latest flashy tech. Right? Like we're still leveling up. You're in the game. You're doing this. We built this space, right? Like we have some of the ins and outs, but it's the things like that. Like, move on because Chip earned it, but did you when you picked it up from him and ran with it?
I picked it up from him and ran
so
with it.
I wonder about where that fits for us and, what nuggets of those affected your career and the critical inflection points you got to as you reinvented. Like, that's interesting to me. It's those little pieces,
That's a good question. You should maybe think of doing this shit for a living.
Now it's super fresh. I think that well, one of the things that's a joke for me is that like I wish I had more time with my students.
Yeah.
Right. Because I encounter them. They're mostly juniors and seniors by the time I even see them. Right. So it's hard to develop a relationship. And now that I don't really teach the intro class as much anymore, then I definitely don't encounter like freshmen and that kind of thing. So I would love to be able to be with them when they got their first taste of a professional thing, and then be able to talk about that. It's a difficult question, I think, because there's a lot of stuff that they have to experience before you can tell them other stuff.
They don't know what they don't know.
And they don't know that they learned a thing until you point out that that's But they had to have gone through that experience to be able to point it out and say you learned something just then.
So the developmental nature of education, it requires this thing, and then I encounter students all the time where I'm like, okay, you got to read this and then do the thing, and then they don't, and then I'm like, yo, this lecture I'm about to give isn't going to make no sense to you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and you were talking about the 2-semester sequence doing the technical stuff afterwards, right? Yeah. So they get and we do this in medicine. There's a didactic part. We're going to give you a lecture. But then the best part is the hands-on bit.
Sure.
Where you got to do it. Because once you do it, you realize, oh, I thought I knew it. Because you teach somebody something, they go, oh, yeah, I get it. But until they do it, they don't know they don't got it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So Hegel would say, that it's the difference between the real and the rational, right?
That's cool. What does that mean?
Well, so there's the thing that can exist in concept, but that doesn't exist in the world, still does not yet really exist, right? We only reach existence when the real is the rational and the rational is the real.
That's awesome.
Look, man, I'm trying to tell you, phenomenology is spirit. Y'all need to get on it.
I'm a trained semiotician.
Okay.
So so phenomenology was one of the things that we had to
sure.
hit, and that well is deep, man.
Yeah,
that is you can fall way down that well.
Yeah, it's rough out there.
Yeah. With bearing in mind who the audience is, right?
Yeah.
That they're people they're mostly artists, not all of them, but they're artists trying to figure out, right? I started to do art. No one gets in the arts because they want money. I mean, they kind of want money, but they do art because they think if I can do this thing that's in me, it'll touch someone in someone else's life and it'll make the world a better place. Everybody wants to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
At a certain point, they get to like, oh, that's awesome. And my rent's due, right? What question have I not asked you that might be helpful to that group of people? It's a badly phrased question. That's a lot of stress. But
sure.
Like, what if because I want to talk to you because your career is awesome and I just want to meet you. But there's a lot of stuff that those people could learn just like being in this room. The whole point of this podcast is to put people in a room with people like you.
Right. I see. Well, it's funny because I mean, arguably the main thing I'm trying to do is express to my students what it takes to do well.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, in life.
In life, yeah.
Right.
So yes, I want you to learn, the various theories of Africana thinking, but I also just want you to do well in life. And there's a particular kind of attitude that correlates to doing well, right? And so how would I say it? So one thing, and this is some advice that a person told me, is like, don't close your own doors.
Oh,
right. So essentially, the idea is that you see a thing that's accepting applications, and you're like, well, that's not really for me, or that's not quite
they won't
exactly
want me.
they won't want me, and et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, you can't know that.
Right.
As a person that's been on committees where I've selected people, or like the committee has made selections, that internal process is not anything you can anticipate or predict. So you don't know who wants you and who doesn't want you. Right. I think also the thing that you really want, you won't get because you're bad at applying for it.
Right.
So really, you should be applying to everything just for the practice of applying.
I like that.
Right. So that because applying is a skill.
We teach this to actors, right? You have to audition. If you want the role or you don't want the role, it doesn't matter. You're gonna audition.
Yeah.
And I like this. Don't close your own doors.
Yeah.
When we started, right, we were talking about I grilled you on your career, right? And it turns out that you were right? You
had in fact done this.
You had in fact done those things. But you said I cobbled together the thing, and I mean, so I find in my own, like, people say, how do I get to where you are? Like, I don't know, man. I backed into this shit.
Yeah, I mean, there's a fundamental, like, I'm gonna sneeze, or am I? I'm on the cusp of sneezing.
Right.
Will it happen? Won't it?
I don't know if we're actually talking about sneezing right now. I'm be honest. I'm not sure.
Yeah, for a second I was like, is he gonna sneeze? It's cool to sneeze. But you're
I didn't know if that was philosophical or not. Because that's smart. Or is he sneezing?
To be very clear, I was about to sneeze.
It's phenomenology, man. You gotta read the books.
Well,
if you'd read the books, you'd understand.
That's on me.
Don't read those books, man. But so you're saying, and this, I've talked to a bunch of entrepreneurs too, and I asked, how did you get to yours?
Yeah.
And they essentially said the same thing, which is the market will tell you what your successes are. You can't plan a life like this.
Yeah. Okay. So I would say that it's opportunity and flexibility.
Yeah.
So fundamentally speaking, it is just as likely that I would not be working in radio or podcasting at all than I would, right? Like, those are two perfectly equally likely outcomes.
Right.
And so there isn't anything fundamentally different about me than someone who wants to do it but isn't, because there is so much like luck and good fortune and ridiculousness that allowed me to like get the job in that whole jam, right? But the thing that made me different, if I may, is just that when they said, hey, we want you to do this thing, can you set up a studio tomorrow? I said, yes.
Right.
As opposed to, I don't know how to do that or whatever.
You didn't close your own door. You said, sure, I think I can.
Yeah. Yeah. So even though I didn't fully have a grasp on it, I mean, I know stuff because I've been in radio, but I didn't fully know how to produce NPR quality sound in my closet. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But I just learned it because I'm fundamentally flexible in that way. And so I think that if you have that kind of flexibility, if you're not a person who's like, but I can't learn how to do that, or I don't know how that, if that's probably not a good look for
it's not, and part of that's improv, right? And I know in talking to you and Elizabeth Byland and the work that we do, right, is yes and.
Yeah.
But there's a framework I use when I'm talking to students or professionals and doing one-on-one coaching. There's got to be a better word for that than coaching. But there's these 3 buckets that I use. It's a 3 circle Venn diagram. And the questions for each bucket, the first one is, what do I do well that people will pay me for? And we're trying to figure out what to do in life.
Yeah.
The second is, what don't I want to do? And that's
important. That's important to know.
But that's broken down into 2 sub buckets, right? One is the strength finders. You will never be good at this. Find people to cover your blind spots. Focus on your strengths, right? So what don't I want to do? And then what shit do I just hate? right? And so like that falls in the second. And the third is, what do I want to learn to improve my career? And if you're talking about an organization, what capacity do I have to build to be successful?
Right.
And so if you think about those three, back to your point, Chioke, it's those first two buckets. What do I do well that people will pay me for? And what don't I want to do? As a student, like when I talk to older folks who are figuring out what they want to do, they can answer those questions. As a student, the only way to fill those buckets up, either I do it well or don't, is to say yes to things. That's the only way we figure out what fits in those buckets.
Take a swing at every pitch that goes across
you
the
have
plate.
to say, I mean, that's what, as an entrepreneur, that's what we did. Like we just said yes to everything. I had like 5 jobs right out of school. I figured out what I didn't like. I didn't want to work at the law firm. I did want to work at the consulting firm, right? Like that.
So
that's how you get
Chioke,
there.
when you look at your career, do you think I do a whole bunch of different shit? Or do you say I do this one thing in 15 different avenues?
I like that question.
I would say that I do a whole bunch of different shit.
Okay. So it all feels different to you.
It all feels different to me, but I often find the central kernel that binds them.
Right.
Right. So everything is different, but everything can be bound in a certain kind of way. Right.
Right. And in your mind, what's that boundary, or what's that binding agent?
So I think that one is like the goal of education. So for the longest time, I did like this NPR type thing, and it was just kind of this thing that I did. But as of late, I've been able to bring it together, like at VCU, because of the podcasting class and that whole jam, right? So I'm able to pursue this idea.
You're able to merge what were otherwise separate things.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that there's also like a fundamental, just like a basic pursuit of quality and getting better, right? So like as an educator, I want the students to get better because of their education. I want to get better as a professor.
So in the forward momentum of your life is about education. Right, and then it branches, and then you're able to re-merge some things at a certain point.
Right. Yeah. So for a long time, the NPR thing was like, it was just like cool side hustle territory.
Right.
Right. But now, because of like those connections and the podcasting world being so small, I'm able to like introduce my students to that world, and that's the most amazing thing, because if I just think about, because I was an undergrad one time, and there was nowhere near the kind of opportunity available that I'm now presenting to my students. Like, here's this for you, it's for free. Right. You know what I'm saying? So the hope is to like accelerate the growth of the people that really dig this stuff.
Yeah. No, I dig that. Well, because a lot of people that I've talked to, I like this. Don't close the door. A lot of people, I don't want to do a side hustle. I don't want to jump into the gig economy because that's not what I do, right? Or I don't want to end up where that's going to go. But you're saying if you find something that makes you happy, that fulfills you in some way, at some point, I had a friend who said, "I'm under no obligation to make sense to you," right?
Yeah, I like that.
My life doesn't need to make sense to you.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, so here's the when you get on an airplane and somebody says, "What do you do?" How do you answer that?
I tend to just say one of the things that I do.
Okay. So you don't try and explain, you do all the things.
No, on a basic level, I might just be like, "Oh, I'm a teacher."
And then they don't ask any more questions.
I'm in radio. Yeah, people, that shuts it down real fast. Right.
But if you say NPR, they're going to talk to you. Like if I say I'm a fight director, they go, "What's?" I have to decide. You have to make a choice. Do I want to talk to this person?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If you want to talk to that person, then you might.
Yes. Yes. So the way I respond is a judgment on you. Yeah. That's
right. So if you're ever on an airplane with Chioke and he says, "I'm a teacher," that's all you need to know.
It's nap time for everybody.
So here's the last question. Okay. I ask everybody. It's the same question phrased 2 ways, which is probably a bad way to do it.
Okay.
There's a bunch of people out there who are thinking about taking a leap or not, right? So the question is, what advice would you give to those people? The other phrasing of that is, if you could go back and talk to your younger self and give yourself some advice, what would it be?
Right, I see. If you're thinking about taking a leap,
or reinventing, or just changing something, or branching off, or
I am a fan of like starting small.
Incremental change.
Incremental. So I'm a motorcyclist, as we established, and I go to the racetrack, and let me tell you, like, I'm faster now than I was when I first went, but I didn't make no big steps.
I got you.
You know what I'm saying? Like I made like very small incremental kind of steps and they built confidence. And then I took that confidence and I took a slightly bigger leap for the sake of knowing. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. So it's not clear to me, especially in the age of like the gig universe, that you have to like turn your back on something and like free fall or take a leap of faith or that whole jam. I mean, maybe sometimes, but I mean, I think for the most part, you can do like a little dab, like dab into something.
Right. Norman Mailer used to say he's a big fan of the muddlers. So people who are just, you know, you don't know you don't have big grand plans. You don't know the thing.
Arguably, I would say that muddling is the true path of progress. I think that people having this idea that like cats are out here just like making breakthroughs and like, what's the language? Like they're being change agents or they're disrupting the space or whatever. No, I think that the only true progress is that which muddles, and that we then get, as Hegel says, like retroactive rationality. Like we're able to look back on it and see the fundamental necessity, like how it led to this or whatever. But very few people anyway, in the moment knew they were doing something big or
it was
whatever.
only in retrospect that they're like, oh, it all makes sense.
Yeah,
now.
only when looking back or whatever. So I'm pro muddle. You know what I'm saying? I'm pro muddle. Yeah.
I think that's all we need, right? That's we end on. We always in the theater you try and end with a button.
Okay, yeah.
I'm pro muddle.
Yeah, that's what's up.
That's it.
Yeah, muddle forward.
Is that Hegel? That life must be lived forward and understood backwards? Is that Hegel?
No.
I
don't know who that is.
I'd never heard it.
But you're talking
so
about
it can't be Hegel.
But you're retroactive. What you call it?
Like retroactive rationale. So it's like, so he's got this thing about like the acorn and the oak tree, right? Okay. So it's like you look at an acorn, it's like, well, what the fuck is that shit? But then like you look at an oak tree and you're like, oh wait, like that thing that I saw earlier became so then you can suddenly see the progression. You can make a rational story out of the progression, right? So that's the fundamental lie of like my and your existence, because yeah, we're sitting here because we're people that have done stuff and et cetera, but like no one, including us, knew what the hell was going to happen whatsoever. And so like the fact that you're even attributing this kind of authority to me such that I'm a person that you want to listen to is a kind of figment of the retroactive rationality of looking at the path that I took and seeing success there.
Right. So we're starting with this success and we're trying to make sense of how you got here.
Right. Yeah, exactly. When in fact, I'm just like a peer like you, kind of generally sitting on a couch eating chips, like wondering what's going to happen next.
I feel seen.
Go forth and muddle, gentlemen.
Chioke, Dr. I'Anson, thank you thank you for your time. I mean, legit.
Thanks, this has been a pleasure. It's fun stuff.
So we don't have to quit now, but I'm going to hit the off button. Visit reinventionpodcast.com for transcripts and other free resources.